You are listening to Arcane Carolinas, an exploration of the Carolinas' folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird. Each episode, we examine the historical context of our topic and aim to preserve some of the stories that help make this part of the world such a fascinating place. Hello and welcome to another Arcane Carolinas, in which I, your co-host, Charlie Mushaw, award-winning podcaster. Sorry, stealing your bit.
No.
I'm bringing you a very ghosty story alongside
your other co-host, multi-award-winning novelist and award-winning podcaster, Michael G. Williams.
Thanks for joining us. A quick summer schedule, fall schedule updates. 2 new stickers will be coming this fall. Woo!
Mm-hmm.
The book that we have mentioned is done. The first draft is done and is with an editor. And there will be a book release party / live episode recording on Thursday, September 28th at Arcane in Durham.
Nice. Yes.
One of the sticker designs and a very special other piece of swag, Halloween treat, will be held back specifically for that event. But understanding that, geography is a challenge for people and there are limitations. If you're a Patreon backer, you'll get that stuff, whether or not you make it to that event. That's one of the perks. There's not a lot of perks, but that's one of them. You get all the swag.
We do our best.
So today's story is a bit of a ghosty one. And before we even get started on this, we've picked up some new folks. And I want to reiterate before I get into this story that when it comes to this kind of stuff, I want to believe. I really do. And you can see my big Wile E. Coyote grin right now if you had video where I want it to be true. But I also want to know the history behind where'd the story come from.
Yeah. Sometimes history disappoints us.
Like Blackbeard's ghost being 1,082 different locations simultaneously at any given moment.
I mean, to be fair, the dead have nothing but time on their hands.
Speaking of Blackbeard and the coast, today's story comes out of Wilmington, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit about Wilmington. It's the county seat of New Hanover County.
Mm-hmm.
The city was initially founded in the 1730s and went through a series of different names: New Carthage, New London, and Newton, which feels like
really?
the short for Newtown. Yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea. I always thought it was Wilmington.
Yeah. No, it took till 1740 for it to be Wilmington.
Oh.
And it was named after Spencer Compton, 1st Earl of Wilmington.
Okay.
Prior to that, it had been primarily occupied by Siouan tribes. It is a port city, has a historic downtown with a 1 3/4 mile river walk situated between the Cape Fear River and the Atlantic Ocean. And that's going to come into play later in the episode. There's a ton of cool historic sites and preservation in Wilmington. One of our community members who lives out that way and actually works in, we'll just describe it as preservation, has graciously offered to help us out on some Wilmington tales in the future. So thank you, Bambi. We have not forgotten about your generous offer. We will take you up on that at some point. Life just has a habit of getting in the way.
Indeed.
And the thing about Wilmington is that there's so many stories, like a lot of coastal towns, that it's hard to just pick one. So I was inclined to do a giant megasode, kind of like Bath, how it then got cut up and turned into like a bunch of smaller ones.
Yeah.
But instead, because, time is scarce and life can get in the way, I decided that why don't we just keep it as a thing like UFOs that we go back to over and over and over? And it can be like here's another Wilmington tale at an undisclosed time in the future.
Yeah, I'm into that.
So I'm going to start with one of their big ones, but not the battleship, which is, as we've talked about, my favorite thing in Wilmington is the battleship. Fun fact about Wilmington, because we try to do fun facts and business plugs. It is the home of the largest domestic television movie production facility outside of California.
Huh. I did not know that.
To date, over 138 films and over 162 television shows, because those were the numbers from 2020. And production obviously continues, have been shot in and around Wilmington.
Wow. I mean, I could have named a couple, but I had no idea.
Yeah, the big ones that I had always heard was like Blue Velvet, Ninja Turtles, the first one, Iron Man 3, Halloween, one of the newer ones, did some stuff in Wilmington. What I didn't realize was the original Super Mario Brothers movie was shot in Wilmington.
No idea. I had no idea about that or the original Ninja Turtles movie. I would have said Blue Velvet. I Know What You Did Last Summer, one of the Halloween movies.
Well, it's funny because like when you start looking at the set that they used for Ninja Turtles for like downtown New York or whatever, and then you look at the less than classic Elmo and Grouchland, you can kind of start to see the cityscapes are very, very similar to the point where you're like, oh, yeah, this was shot on that soundstage.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So, and I'm guessing if I went back and watched the old Super Mario Brothers movie when they're down in like Koopa Town or whatever it's called, you could, and it's like a city, and you could probably figure out. Yeah. So anyway, Wilmington, lots of tales. So the legend, my best spooky voice, built upon the one-time site of a public gallows and potter's field, the Price-Gause house. The Price-Gause house. Come on down to the Price-Gause house. See, I couldn't even keep it serious past the first bullet. It's currently located at 514 Market Street in Wilmington and is said to be a hotbed of supernatural activity. And even the surrounding grounds are said to be home to supernatural influence and spirits. The legend goes that this location was at one time far enough outside like the hustle and bustle of the city that it could function as a place for capital punishment.
Oh.
Because, it was like we're hanging Bill the Thief this week. So, come on out and watch the hanging and bring your kids.
Yeah. Fun for the whole family.
Right. We'll pack a lunch. And the unclaimed bodies, so like if a family didn't claim the body, they'd be buried right on the location, thus earning it the name, the area, Gallows Hill.
Oh, interesting.
Eventually, the city grew and the site for execution needed to be moved further out. So the land was sold off in 1860 with a house built upon it by a Dr. William J. Price and his wife, Sarah T. Price.
I'm going to guess they maybe didn't do a great job of moving some bodies, but that's just because that seems to come up every time we talk about a graveyard.
So according to local historian, author, and Ghost Walk host, John Herchak, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name, John, I'm going off phonetics. He has spoken with descendants of the family, and generational lore tells of phantom footsteps, tapping on walls, phantom smells of pipe smoke inside this house, and lights and water faucets turning on their own, as well as the movement of objects around the room have persisted over generations. There's some slightly more horrifying tales. Allegedly, a niece of the good doctor had come to visit and experienced the sensation of someone running fingers through her hair.
Oh.
And when she looked up into the mirror, she saw the reflection of a hazy figure of a man standing over her.
Oh.
So she ran screaming out of the house.
Yeah, as one would. And
refused to leave the company of her aunt and uncle and slept on their floor until she could return home. This is all from Herchak's book, Ghosts of Old Wilmington. It's also all over the web, but we'll get to that. Allegedly, the most horrifying incident occurred when the Prices, the elder Prices, were in a bed and a shadowy figure was seen standing at the foot of the bed, physically pulling the blankets down to the floor before disappearing.
Oh, I like that. That's a fun one.
I don't.
I'm not volunteering to experience it, but I like the visual.
I read that and I cracked up because the story that I shared a couple of years ago about my dad and my grandfather running the fishing wire through the slats in the floor in the old farmhouse and then pulling the Anyway, in more contemporary times, the house is now the offices of the Bowman Murray Hemingway Architectural Company, sometimes just called BMH. The current occupants allegedly still report phantom footsteps, and one employee was displaced during Hurricane Bertha and tried to spend the night in the house and couldn't.
Ooh,
because he was too scared of the noises. Some of the Ghosts of Old Wilmington Ghost Tour, named same as the book, Ghost Walk attendees have reported feeling nauseous near the home, with words appearing etched into ice on the ground.
Oh,
Other disturbances, like babies on the tour will spontaneously cry when getting near the building.
huh. Have they said ever what the words are that
Help.
appear? Oh, all right.
And one person felt frozen in place. And then when someone went over to touch her, she was like, I can't move. And I was like, she's freezing cold.
Mm-hmm.
So like big, this place is cursed vibes.
For some reason, that's the one that strikes me as like, yeah.
Right. I can't move.
Right.
Look at me. It's very look at me.
Yeah. I'm the one that the ghosts care about.
Right. I'm the bestest ghost friend.
Right.
So these stories are all widely reported across the web, like just repeated almost ad nauseum, to the point where I feel like Herchak should get like credit on all these different websites and blogs and whatever.
It's one of those copy and paste stories.
Yes, it's exactly one of those copy and paste stories, though some people make mistakes, like just factual errors in the history, which we're going to get into the history now. And like news sites like WRAL have run these stories about this house, like usually during the fall.
Yeah. I do, for those copy and paste stories, suggest that we start using the term copy pasta as opposed to creepy pasta. I don't know. It just occurs to me.
I like it. So there's also a home on the same block that I'll get to, where sometimes some of the copy pasta will include facts about that instead. And they'll be like, and then this happened. You're like, no, it didn't.
Yeah.
But the haunting details remain consistent. The history gets a little wonky, but the haunting details remain consistent. So that made me like really go like, well, what's up with the history then? Like if this, if that's the part that seems to be ebbing and flowing a little bit, like let's drill down on that, because the haunting stories are consistent.
Okay.
So deed books, the Wilmington City Directory, obituaries, and census records all confirm that Dr. William Price, born 1804, was married to Sarah Price, born 1824. They did build the home in 1860. She died in 1865. He died in 1868.
Wow. Okay.
At that point, the home remained in the family until descendant Mary Gause, which is why it's called the Price-Gause house, sold it to the Wilmington Chamber of Commerce in 1968.
Okay, so exactly 100 years later.
Yeah, not 48, as a couple of sites say. This is all verifiable by like deeds and stuff. And a historical marker was placed at the home in 1991 with the following texts: Italianate style house. I like houses. Italianate style house built for William Jones Price, 1804 to 1868, Lieutenant Colonel, CSA physician, and his wife, Sarah T., 1824 to 1865, inherited by son Captain Joseph Price, 1835 to 1895, commander of CSA, Noose and Wilmington Harbor Master. House remained in family till 1968. So these were prominent individuals in the community, doctors and big name military people. Here's the thing. There are absolutely no records of the term Gallows Hill in reference to Wilmington, North Carolina, to be found prior to 2006.
Really?
The same year the book Ghosts of Old Wilmington was published.
Oh.
No blogs, no news articles, no historical documents, nothing.
Oh. Like zero.
Like zero.
Oh.
I even found an academic paper on the evolution of capital punishment in the state of North Carolina. And like it looked at different time periods and stuff. There is a place in New England called Gallows Hill. There's a Gallows Hill Road in another state as well. There's a Gallows Hill in Salem. But as for Wilmington, I'll just share this. If you listen to this, you can put search parameters in to eliminate noise in most databases or even basic search engines. So I walked it back first to the publication, and I was like 2006, and I included 2006, and I found one or two like press release things that had it in there. So then I took 2006 off and like went earlier, nothing.
Ooh.
Yeah. Further, I mentioned that other house on the block. It's not just like down around the corner. It's directly across the street.
Okay.
It is a house of infamy known as the Bellamy Mansion. It is infamous for the enslaved people that built it, their treatment, things that were found during excavation and remodeling, like buttons laid in a way people believe is like folk magic to, like ward off whatever.
Oh, okay. So there's like ritual stuff built into the house.
Right. It's on ghost tours. There is no mention in any of the Bellamy Mansion documents or stories, which again is, if you have parked cars perpendicular, I'd say 4 cars across, right?
Yeah.
Like very close. Nothing about Gallows Hill.
Oh, and that's the kind of place where you feel like that would be part of the story.
Yeah. And it was described as being a wide open sandy bluff in the book. Here's the other problem. The Bellamy Mansion started construction a year prior to the Price House. And cartography, Michael, is not a new practice. In fact, it's very old.
Yeah, it's kind of been a thing for a long time.
It is a well-preserved method of recording history. So I started looking at old maps. And guess what? This area was already well and subdivided into small lots and building up by 1860. And it is also only 6 blocks from the water.
Oh, they're not burying people there.
So who did William buy it from was my question. I was like, okay, well, he had to buy it from somebody to build this house, right? This is where the history gets really interesting. The answer is he got it from 2 business partners, one David Fulton and one Alfred Price.
Oh,
same last name.
Yeah.
They were selling off land. He bought it in 1844. So he had it for some time.
Yeah.
And they were selling off land to raise money to launch their very successful newspaper that then ran for decades, the Wilmington Journal.
Oh, okay.
And that Alfred Price was William Price's brother.
Okay.
This was a way for a well-to-do and influential family to keep wealth in the family.
Absolutely. This was not a place where they buried people or hanged people or anything like that.
No.
This was his brother's land.
Yeah. I'd say I don't take joy in this, but I do. It still pro vampires all over again. So looking back on the lore, the thing that bothers me, sometimes these stories sell it just a little too hard.
Mm-hmm.
If visible entities are physically harassing your family, you wouldn't stay there.
No, yeah, I probably wouldn't. I started to try to make an argument for it. Nah, I wouldn't stick around.
Sources in the book aren't named. And the amount of detail and amount of events attributed to the initial inhabitants are really tough for me to accept, considering that at most, let's say that they started construction and finished in 1860 and the family moved in, which was highly unlikely. They would have lived there for a total of 8 years before dying.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories, if you look this house up prior to 2006, were all just about like, oh, it's a historic building.
Oh, this is not looking good for the legend version.
So here's the thing. These stories are going to persist. It's not like our little show is going to stop people from making a buck off of this. And verifiable history is arguably more interesting to me. Oh, one of the Price descendants, he's up for, what is it called? Canonization, beatification, whatever. He's like up for sainthood.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because he was like the first clergy from North Carolina or something.
Okay.
Like native born North Carolinian priest or whatever, and like traveled. And I don't know. I didn't read too much into it because I found it interesting, but not that interesting. Because I couldn't determine if he actually got it, because it was like in 2012 when they put him up for it. And I don't really know what the process is, but I feel like if you were going to get it and you got nominated in 2012, it would have happened.
Traditionally, it requires a lot, including things like having performed miracles. So I'm not Catholic. I can't speak for Catholic tradition. I don't know what the proper process is. I would be surprised if we had a native saint that we did not know about.
Good old Saint Price.
Yeah.
Tell you what the miracle is. These stories made it out of the news.
So am I wrong in thinking it sounds like this guy, and as a novelist, like bless him for it, but just made it up?
That's what I'm feeling like.
Yeah. Okay.
Obviously, this is going to persist. The Price family history is pretty interesting. They founded a successful paper, all that stuff. None of that matters. People are going to keep saying that they see things in the windows. People post pictures of dust and smoke online and are like, oh, I saw a thing there. So I want to believe, but I don't think it's what it seems to be on the surface. That said, if there was trauma there, if you're a believer in ghosts and spirits, I can understand why you would say it stands to reason that a place with a bunch of trauma and bodies would get weird.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a believer in different types of ESP or psychic projection, it could stand to reason that a bunch of people truly believing and projecting that a place is haunted could cause the perception of phenomena.
Yeah, I like it.
If you're not a believer in the possibility of paranormal or unexplained activity in any capacity, I'm not sure why you're listening this far. But as an interesting aside, it got me thinking about why are there so many ghost stories in Wilmington? And there's folk beliefs going back across cultures and across great spanses of time that some spirits can't cross water. So think about Wilmington. It's surrounded on 3 sides by water. So what if they're all just stuck?
Yeah. And what if they don't know that they could have gone west? Because to them, that was wilderness.
Right. I'm stuck. I can't go anywhere. I'm going to harass this house and write help in the ice. Comb people's hair and steal their blankets.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a magazine, an academic journal called Science, also referred to as Science Magazine. It's a peer-reviewed academic journal of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS, or AS, if you try to read it. It was first published in 1880, and in 1884 they published a few really sensationally titled pieces, which are fun, like "Ghosts in Water," what, stuff like that, on the topic of water and spiritualism, because that was a big thing at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
And they acknowledged in some of these articles that there's a relationship between ghosts or spirits and running water found in cultures on different continents. And one of the people that wrote into this journal tried to say, well, maybe one explanation is that generations of people observing and working with animals, like dogs, tracking dogs or whatever, losing scent at running water. Maybe they thought there was some kind of correlation to your spirit is able to be tracked by these animals that have senses that we don't, or heightened senses, that the water acts as some kind of barrier. Kind of fun. I don't know. I don't think that necessarily explains the origins of the belief to my satisfaction, because it does span, so far, but I like it. I like it as a theory.
It's a neat idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, in 1884, what are you going to do? You're not going to jump on the internet and talk in the chat room about it. You're going to write in hey, what about this?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Price House. Sorry to ruin your fun.
So, but as a what if, if I were going to use this in a story myself, I think what I would write is this. What if the Price brothers were using this land as a place for a gallows and a place to bury those who were unclaimed? And they were doing it because the city needed a place to do that. And maybe the city was even willing to pay people for the opportunity to do that without having to go find a new place as the city grew. And so they do it on the sly. They do it without advertising it. They don't call it Gallows Hill formally, but maybe it gets that name around town as a place that occasionally condemned prisoners are taken and they never come back. And so it's not that 19th century idea of a very public execution where the whole family comes and you pack a picnic lunch and it's a moral lesson for everyone, et cetera, et cetera. But instead, it's a place to which some prisoners who they know will never be claimed and no one wants them, and the city is willing to pay somebody to take them off their hands, where they get whisked. And it gets done quietly, and they get buried on a sandy bluff in a place where it is not a good idea to bury bodies. And then eventually there are too many houses around and the place gets too grown up. And so they decide, well, we can't do this anymore. And one Price brother says to the other, I'll buy the land. I'll take it off your hands so you don't have to worry about it. I'm prominent. You've got a new business venture to worry about where you're starting a newspaper. You've got a lot of public reputation on the line. I'll take this off your hands. I'll build a house here. It'll be fine. And they do. And then it turns out the place is just haunted as can be. And it is so haunted by the spirits of the people who were whisked to this place and executed silently in the night by this family that those ghosts haunt them to death. over the next 8 years. And then as soon as they're dead, the deal is done. The family doesn't talk about it because they don't want people to know why they were getting haunted. But the stories persist. People in the neighborhood hear it. Servants hear it. Enslaved people working there hear it. Everybody knows what's happening, but they're also a little afraid to talk about it too publicly. And then maybe 160 years later, 140 years later, rather, somebody comes along who is just a little bit tuned in because this is their gig, and they pick up the stories, and that's how it gets published.
That's nice.
I'm trying to be very generous of spirit.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's I mean, somebody told this person something, right?
Maybe
Had to come from somewhere.
But I mean, we have, frankly, in other folklorists, other historians' works, and with historians, there's kind of an air quotes around that. We have seen instances where a story just got made up and put in a book and repeated as being fact.
So that's it. That's there you go, Wilmington. Stick with the battleship.
The battleship is really cool.
Yeah, the battleship is awesome. And there's there's another haunted house right across the street from it. So maybe we'll do that one next when we get around to it.
I feel like that one would be great.
You can send all hate mail for this to arcanecarolinas@gmail.com. You can tell me 6 ways from Sunday how I got it wrong. Bring your sources.
Yeah, the fact that nobody was referring to this as Gallows Hill until this book got published is pretty damning, you know?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I tried the North Carolina State Library. I tried Bing. I tried Google. I tried Bing, Michael. I should tell you.
That's desperation. That's
it is.
Really
and I was just like putting date parameters on it. And that's where it started choking. I mean, I could go back and find all kinds of old stuff, but nothing that called it that.
Yeah. That's no good. I do like the idea of the illicit burial ground. I'm going to tuck that one away and use that one sometime in a story.
Well, hope you liked it. We'll be back soon.
Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Arcane Carolinas. Thanks for joining us. If you liked it, give us a rating, leave a comment. If you didn't like it, send us an email and tell us why. If you're not wrong, we'll try to fix it.
And if you're interested in award-winning speculative fiction, including science fiction, urban fantasy, and horror, find me, Michael G. Williams, at michaelgwilliamsbooks.com, and check out Falstaff Books at falstaffbooks.com.
If you'd like to pick up some Arcane Carolinas merch, look at behind-the-scenes info, pictures, videos, stuff like that, all the things that get cut, check out arcanecarolinas.com, where you can get access to our Patreon, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, all that in one place, including the merch store. Buy a shirt.
Clothe your body.
Drape your body in our wares.
Be our living billboards.
I don't watch a lot of HGTV.